Hey everybody, thank you for joining the Logos Mentality from May 13th, 2020. I'm grateful for each one of you for taking some time to listen in person live or actually catching the recap on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I'm really excited about tonight's message. Today we're going to talk about a particular story out of 1 Kings 19. It's one of my favorites. I think most people know the beginning of the story of 1 Kings 19, or actually it starts in 1 Kings 18, kind of transitions into 19. It's where Elisha is on Mount Carmel, and he's going to battle the 850 prophets of Baal. He calls down fire, and he does it in such a magnificent way where the fire not only burns up the sacrifice, but it burns up all the water and all the rocks and everything around the altar. And then he chases off 850 prophets of Baal, slaughters them. And then shortly thereafter, Jezebel reached out, sent him a letter, just told him, "Hey, I'm going to kill you." And then he just gets on the run. And it's just an amazing turn of events. And so we're really not even going to focus on Elijah, but I just had to give you a little bit of background on Elisha and where this story was heading. So he's now been in the wilderness. He took a day's journey without food or water, and he was there on the mountain. Actually, God passed by. He wasn't in the lightning or the hurricane or the fire, but he was in the still small voice. We all remember that story. Then he takes a rest, and then he gets up and he sends him on his way. Right? That's where we're going to pick up here in 1 Kings 19. So God's just reminding him in verse 18, "Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." So God's just reminding him, you're not the only one. So even in chapter 18, when he's saying that I'm the only prophet, God's just reminding him, you're not the only one. Okay. In verse 19, this is where our story picks up. So he departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, while he was plowing with 12 pairs of oxen before him, and he with the 12th pair. And Elisha passed over to him and threw his mantle on him. He left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, "Please let me kiss my father and mother, then I will follow you." And he said to him, "Go back again, for what have I done to you?" So he returned from him and took the pair of oxen and sacrificed them, boiled their flesh with the implements of the oxen, and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and followed Elijah and ministered it. Now, this is a fantastic story on so many levels. Number one, I just love the part that Elisha, he's on his way, and he doesn't have any time to have a conversation with Elisha, to chit-chat. It says, while he was plowing with the 12th pair of oxen, which we'll get back to in just a minute, Elijah passed over to him and threw his mantle on him, right? So his mantle is going to be his large overcoat, essentially. And then it says Elisha had to leave his oxen and run after Elijah. And that's when he said, "Please let me kiss my father and mother goodbye." Elijah didn't have any time because he was on his purpose and he was on a mission. And he knew every step was meaningful. Every interaction was meaningful. And he knew this was all he needed to do. Now, Elisha would have known exactly what that meant from having the mantle thrown on him from the prophet. He would have known exactly what that meant. And so there probably wasn't much explanation needed. Plus, Elijah's history probably would have prevailed, and that he obviously did this for a purpose. And so Elisha probably knew all that. Now, I want to switch over to Elisha real quick. So Elisha had 12 pairs of oxen, right? So he had 24 oxen that were plowing. That means Elisha wasn't a nobody. Elisha was a somebody. He had some money because he had 12 pairs of oxen, and meaning he had 12 pairs of oxen, which means he had land. He had enough land to where he needed 12 pairs of oxen. You get what I'm going at? Many of us say, if my circumstances were a little bit different, if I had a little bit more money, then I would be able to walk out my purpose or my destiny. If I had this or if I had that, there's a lot of excuses that come into our mind whenever, a lot of times, those are often hindrances to walk out our purposes. But you can see right here that Elisha, it's not like he didn't have anything. It's not like he was just sitting around and had nothing else to do. No, he was busy at work. He was obviously a landowner. He was obviously very wealthy. So the decision to leave all that behind was obviously in his mind at some point, right? Or it could have been there, could have crossed his mind. And quite frankly, we're going to get down to verse 21 of why he did what he did. So I wanted to take a moment and just reflect on Elisha. He had money. He was already working. He had an opportunity when this purpose, when this meaning, when this opportunity to live out what God wanted him to do came along. That happens to all of us. And all of us have to make a decision, just like Elisha did. Am I going to leave my comfortability? Am I going to leave my success or what's comfortable in my life or the relationships? Am I going to leave that and go after where God's calling me, knowing that he knows best, knowing that I don't have the full picture, because Elisha sure didn't. I mean, he was uncovering himself from Elijah's cloak, and Elijah's, scooted right on past him. He's having to chase him down, And so I want us to be cognizant of that when God comes and he metaphorically throws this cloak on us to call us to our meaning and our purpose and our mission in life, which we all have one. God created us as a masterpiece, as Ephesians 2:10 tells us. We have a specific purpose and a specific mission. Each of us do. Okay. So now he's made the decision. He received the cloak. He knows what it means. And he's made the decision to go chase after Elijah. He had two choices. He could have just thrown it on the ground, just kept on going with what he's doing. Elijah's, history prevailed him. I don't want any of that, which unfortunately plenty of us do that. I did that for a decade, where God continually threw his mantle on me and I continually discarded it. Okay, but he makes the choice. Now he's running after Elijah. Okay, he gets to him and he says, please let me kiss my father and mother, then I will follow you. He had every intention to follow him right then and right there. But Elijah reminds him, what have I done to you? Go back. You obviously have something that's holding you back. You obviously have something that's triggering you. If you're going to go all in, he didn't say all this, but these are basically what he's saying. If you're going to go all in, you can't be looking back. And so Elisha makes the conscious decision right then. He returned from him, took the pair of oxen and sacrificed them, boiled their flesh in the implements of the oxen. He gave it to the people and they ate. A couple other translations go even more in depth, that he's slaughtered all of his oxen. And he broke apart the plow and used it as kindling for the fire, right? And so what he did is he's saying that there's no plan B. Whenever I'm choosing God's purpose, I have to choose it with no plan B. I got to choose it knowing that things are going to be difficult, knowing that the best is yet to come, but it's probably not the first thing, because I have growing, I have stretching, I have pruning that I need to go through to continue to walk out what God's purpose and mission is for my life. And so I got to remove all aspects of plan B, or else the enemy is going to come point them out. And I guarantee you, Elisha, as he's walking and as he's doing this, because once his journey started with Elijah, it's not like, he received his mantle right then and there. It was several years later that it wasn't until Elijah was called up to heaven with the fiery chariots that he took up that mantle and walked in that same power, or he actually had twice the power and authority that Elijah had. But it wasn't immediate. And so I know that the enemy could have, and probably still did, remind him of his previous life, remind him that he had opportunities back there, remind him in his own mind. And I know that he does it to us. I know he does it to me all the time. Remind me about how things could be better if I would just give up on certain struggles. Remind me how things would be better if I would just move on and not continue to battle certain battles. I just want to encourage you to continue to stand. I encourage you to remove any plan Bs or plan Cs or plan Ds or Es or Fs, anything like that. There needs to be one plan, and it's plan A, and it's God's plan, God's purpose, God's meaning for your life. Now, Jesus reminds us, all right, so Jesus reminds us of a very similar aspect of this passage. It's actually a reference point, the Old Testament or the New Testament reference point to this Old Testament verse. So again, that's 1 Kings 19:20. And then in Matthew chapter 8, verse 21, one of his disciples, Jesus' disciples, requested first, Jesus had just called him. He said, Lord, first let me go bury my father. And Jesus reminds him, let the dead bury their dead, and you need to come and follow me. Now, it seems a little harsh whenever he says it, but again, God's just reminding him, you can't have a plan B. Because oftentimes we set out with good intents. I'm going to go back, I'm going to bury my mother and father, but then, I forgot I need to do this. Yep, I need to do that. And then I get caught up, and I get distracted, and I forget about the purpose and the mission. And so Jesus is just reminding us to make first things first. That same story is again in Luke 9, verse 51. And again, just to quote it, he says, then he said to another man, again, Matthew says it's one of his disciples, follow me. And then the man replied, Lord, let me go bury my father. But Jesus told him, let the dead bury their own dead. You, however, go and proclaim the kingdom of God. It's just an amazing turn of events. And it's not lack of empathy. It's actually full of empathy, because Jesus is reminding him of the meaning and the purpose for that gentleman's life. I also wanted to give you a couple more examples real quick of just the call, because that's really what all of this is all about. Your purpose, your meaning, your vision for life is a call where Jesus is going to call you. Okay, if you haven't watched this series, The Chosen, yet, it's a free app. This isn't an endorsement for it at all. But the entire series is about Jesus calling individuals, and it's tremendous. And it just has caused me to continue to look at the calling so differently. And so here we go. Mark chapter 2, verse 14. As he was walking along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth. Jesus says, follow me, he told him. And Levi got up and followed him. What amazing. It's just, I love how the verse just kind of runs along. Like there was no hesitation. There was no thought about it. Of course, that's what that's what I should be doing. And it's amazing, because whenever we get in that frame of mind, whenever we get called, our action will be very similar. When he says, Jordan, go do this, it's a stop everything that I'm doing and do it. When he says, hey, go give this homeless person $5, you don't ask why. You don't say, how about $2? No, you just go do $5, and you don't say anything, because you don't need to know the big picture. I was called, I was asked to do this. When he asks you to hold the door open for a lady, or as a lady, if he triggers you to send a text message or post on a social media, you don't ask differently. You just do it. Give you another example. In John chapter 1, verse 43, it says, the next day, Jesus decided to set out for Galilee. Finding Philip, he told him, follow me. And he did. Just an amazing, amazing turn of events to think. We all have this opportunity. We all have this opportunity where Jesus is literally looking you in the face and asking you to follow him. He's calling you. He's choosing you. He's giving you specific purpose and meaning. And no, none of us know the end result. We don't know how we're going to get to the end, but we know that we're going to walk with him, because he's told us he'll never leave us or forsake us. So I want to leave you guys on this moment and go back to our 1 Kings 19:19 and give you one last thought from that. So 1 Kings 19:19 ends in verse 20. Elijah calls Elisha, throws his mantle on him. Elisha runs after him. Elisha goes back, slaughters his 12 pairs of oxen, rips apart the plow, burns it to to create the sacrifice for the oxen. But what is next is truly tremendous. It says, so he returned from following him and took the pair of oxen and sacrificed them, boiled their flesh with the implements of the oxen, and gave it to the people, and they ate. Every time you choose to walk out your purpose, walk out your mission, walk out your vision, others will be blessed. It's an immediate byproduct. Every day that you choose to live your life purposeful, meaningful, with a vision and direction that's clear, others will be blessed. I encourage you today to walk out your purpose for yourself, but also knowing that every day that you choose to walk out your purpose, those around you will be blessed. I'm praying for you, and more importantly, I'm rooting for you. Have a great day.